Ghanaians are living with a difference, not just in Ghana, but in other countries. So this is a video of a Ghanaian lady who served Baron Trump. For those of you who don't know who Baron Trump is, he is the son of the president, the American president-elect Donald Trump. Guys, what happened sparked a nationwide conversation. Ghanaians are representing Africa outside the continent. Oh my God, like the lady really stand out for Africa. Guys, without being said, let's watch this video together and share our thoughts. Let's watch.
When a teenage girl from Ghana served Baron Trump at a quiet cafe, she expected nothing more than a routine shift. But what he left behind, a note and a tip, brought her to tears and sparked a conversation across the nation. The smell of espresso mixed with faint notes of fresh pastries lingered in the air. The afternoon lull had stretched longer than usual, and the hum of conversation in the cafe had finally tapered to a murmur. For Abina, the shift felt like a marathon. Every tick of the clock seemed to slow, and every clink of cutlery was just another reminder that she'd been on her feet for hours. She wiped the last table by the window and checked her phone. Just one more hour. Rent was due in 2 days, and her phone bill sat unpaid. Tips that day had been pitiful, mostly small change tossed half-heartedly onto tables by busy patrons who never looked up from their phones. Abina exhaled, pulled her braids into a tighter bun, and grabbed her order pad. Her manager, an older woman with tired eyes, gave her a glance as if to say, "Hang in there." But Abina was already on autopilot. Then the bell above the door rang. The sound startled her back into focus. A young man stepped in, tall, lean, and dressed in a plain shirt and slacks that made him look effortlessly put together. 2 men followed close behind, blending almost too well into the backdrop, their sharp eyes scanning every corner of the room. The cafe wasn't exactly a hotspot for high-profile guests. It wasn't the kind of place where you'd expect celebrities, let alone someone who came with what looked like security. For a moment, Abina froze, her pen hovering over her pad. But professionalism kicked in, and she walked toward the table in the far corner where the young man had settled. "Good afternoon," Abina said, trying to muster her best smile. "Can I get you something to start?" The young man looked up, and for a moment, Abina nearly forgot what she was supposed to say. His face was striking, but there was something familiar about him. His features, the slight calmness in his expression. Then it clicked. Baron Trump. Abina had seen his face plastered across the news over the years, son of the former president. She felt her heartbeat quicken, but she did what she was trained to do, stay calm. This was a customer, no more, no less. "I'll just have a cappuccino and maybe one of those croissants," Baron said softly, his voice polite but reserved. "Absolutely. Anything else?" He shook his head. "That'll be perfect. Thank you." His words were simple, but his tone carried something Abina couldn't quite put her finger on. Kindness, maybe, or just sincerity. She scribbled the order, turned back toward the counter, and tried to shake off the flutter in her chest. She wasn't sure if it was nerves or exhaustion, but something about this moment stuck with her. As Abina prepared the coffee, she couldn't help but glance back toward the corner table. Little did she know, this small interaction was about to turn her entire day, and maybe her week, on its head. The steam from the cappuccino machine hissed as Abina frothed the milk. She kept her movements deliberate, steady, anything to distract her from the odd nervous energy twisting in her stomach. "Why am I acting like this?" she thought. Baron Trump, of all people. Her eyes darted back to the table. He sat quietly, his posture straight but not stiff. He wasn't scrolling on a phone or typing away on a laptop like most patrons. He simply stared out the window at the street beyond, lost in his thoughts. Occasionally, he sipped water from the glass she had dropped off earlier. By the time the cappuccino and croissant were ready, Abina had settled herself. She balanced the tray carefully and approached his table. "Here you go," she said, gently placing the cup and pastry down in front of him. He looked up and smiled faintly. "Thank you. You're welcome. Let me know if you need anything else," she replied, keeping her tone neutral but polite. As Abina turned to walk back to the counter, something stopped her. Maybe it was the feeling of his eyes still on her, curious, but not invasive. Or maybe it was just her own tiredness making her self-conscious. Either way, her heart fluttered again. Minutes passed, and Abina busied herself with cleaning empty tables and refilling sugar containers. The cafe had grown quiet again, save for the faint hum of background music coming from the speakers. She felt the weight of the room in a way she hadn't before, like something invisible was pressing against her, urging her to pay attention. Out of the corner of her eye, Abina noticed Baron pull a pen from his pocket and lean over the receipt as his meal came to an end. He scribbled something quickly, almost as if he didn't want anyone to notice, folded the paper neatly, and tucked it beneath the empty coffee cup. Then he stood, gathering his phone and coat. Abina watched him for a split second before forcing herself to focus. "Thank you for coming," she called out softly as he passed by. Baron turned back just slightly and smiled. "Have a good day." Those words lingered longer than they should have. Abina stood there, frozen in the middle of the cafe, her eyes following him as he exited with his security close behind. The bell above the door chimed one last time, and then the room was quiet again. She let out a slow breath, picked up her tray, and made her way over to clear the table. The cappuccino cup sat empty, a small residue of foam clinging to its rim. Beside it, the croissant plate held nothing but crumbs. And there it was, the receipt. Abina picked it up carefully, the folded paper feeling heavier than it should have been. Her first thought was of the tip, maybe it would be generous. That wasn't uncommon with wealthy customers. They often threw money around to make up for their lack of interaction. But as she unfolded the receipt, the air in her chest vanished. At the bottom, beneath the total, was a number, a tip so large it made her stomach drop. 4 crisp digits. And above it, a handwritten note. "Your kindness and hard work don't go unnoticed. My family has been where you are. Stay strong. Brighter days are coming." Abina's hands began to tremble. She read the words again, this time slower, letting every sentence sink in. Her eyes darted to the door where Baron had disappeared, and her vision blurred as hot tears pooled in her eyes. Her knees felt weak. She stumbled back into the empty chair across from where he'd sat and just stared. The note. It wasn't about the money. It was the words, the weight of empathy written in ink by someone she never imagined would notice her existence. For the first time in weeks, months, even, Abina felt seen. As tears streamed down her face, Abina thought about what those words meant. But this moment wasn't over, not yet. Someone else would see the note, and Abina's story was about to ripple far beyond the walls of the cafe. The sound of the cafe door opening jolted her from her trance. She wiped her tears quickly with the back of her hand, tucking the note into her apron pocket as her manager approached. "You okay?" her manager asked, narrowing her eyes in concern. Abina hesitated for a second, trying to find the right words. "I'm fine," she said, though her voice cracked slightly. Just a really generous tip?" Her manager raised an eyebrow, not convinced. "Generous enough to make you cry?" Abina nodded, managing a shaky laugh as she reached for the folded receipt and held it out. The moment her manager saw the number, she let out a low whistle. "No way. Who left this?" "Corner table," Abina replied, her voice softer now. "That was Baron Trump." Her manager blinked. "The Baron Trump? Are you serious?" "Yeah," Abina said, pulling the note from her pocket. "But it's not just the money." She handed the note over carefully, as though it might crumble in her hands. Her manager read it, and for the first time in months, Abina saw a genuine softness in her boss's eyes. "Wow," she whispered, handing the note back. That's something else." "It really is," Abina agreed, folding the note again like it was some kind of treasure. "I don't even know why he wrote it. I didn't do anything special." Her manager looked at her for a long moment. "Sometimes people just know, Abina. They can see what you're going through, even if you think you're hiding it. You're here every day, working your tail off. Always kind to customers, even the ones who don't deserve it." Maybe he saw that. Abina swallowed hard. She hadn't realized how much she needed to hear those words. 4 months, she'd been treading water, balancing school, work, and sending money back home to Ghana to help her family. She'd been kind because it was the one part of herself she hadn't let the world take away. And somehow he'd seen that. As the minutes passed, a strange buzz filled the cafe. A couple of coworkers whispered by the pastry display, pointing toward the table where Baron had sat. News traveled quickly, and it wasn't long before one of the baristas came up to her. "You served him, didn't you?" the girl asked, her voice somewhere between excitement and disbelief. "What did he say? Was he nice?" Abina smiled faintly. "Yeah. He was really nice." "Man, I'd freak out," the barista laughed. "That's so crazy." Abina didn't say anything more. She didn't want to explain the note or the tip. Somehow, sharing it felt like taking something sacred and putting it on display. For now, it was hers. The rest of her shift passed in a blur. Every interaction felt lighter somehow, every table she cleared a little easier. When she finally pulled off her apron at the end of the day, the folded note remained safe in her pocket. As Abina made her way to her shared apartment, she found herself holding the receipt again, staring at the words. "My family has been where you are. Stay strong. Brighter days are coming." She whispered the sentence under her breath as though saying it aloud would make it real. He didn't have to write that, she thought. He didn't have to care. But he did. And as the train rumbled through the tunnels, Abina closed her eyes and allowed herself to believe, for the first time in a long time, that maybe things would get better. What Abina didn't know was that this quiet moment would soon echo much louder than she ever imagined. The note wouldn't stay a secret for long. The next morning, the sun barely peeked through Abina's window when her phone buzzed on the small table beside her bed. She groaned, rolling over to check the screen. Dozens of notifications flooded her lock screen. "Why is everyone texting me?" she mumbled, squinting at the messages. "Girl, is this you? You're famous. Is this real?" Her thumb hovered over one message that included a link. It was a screenshot of the Daily Post headline. Baron Trump leaves Ghanaian waitress a touching note and a huge tip. Internet reacts. Abina sat bolt upright, her heart hammering in her chest as she clicked the link. The article told the story word for word. A young woman balancing school and work, an unexpected guest, a note full of empathy, and a tip that seemed to have changed her life. The photo attached was of the note itself, her note, written in Baron's neat handwriting. Abina's hands shook as she scrolled. How did this happen? She opened another message from one of her coworkers, the guy at table 5 yesterday. Someone must have seen the note and snapped a picture. It's everywhere now. Her heart dropped. Everywhere? She flipped through her social media accounts, and sure enough, it was all there. On Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. The note had gone viral. Hundreds of comments poured in. This is what the world needs more of. Baron Trump seems like such a kind soul. I don't care what anyone says. This is beautiful. Wait, what about the waitress? I hope she's okay. The more Abina read, the more overwhelmed she felt. Strangers debated her story, her life, without knowing a single thing about her. She dropped the phone onto her bed and buried her face in her hands. "What do I do now?" she whispered to herself. The sound of her roommate's voice echoed from the kitchen, grounding her. She couldn't afford to lose her head over this, not with tuition to pay, bills stacking up, and her family depending on her. But even as she gathered her thoughts, the pit in her stomach remained. She wasn't ready for her story to belong to the world. Abina took a deep breath, trying to anchor herself. The morning sun filtered through the curtains, and for a moment, she let its warmth calm her racing thoughts. She needed a plan, not just to navigate this newfound attention, but to stay true to herself. As she debated whether to leave her apartment that day, her phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't a flood of messages, but the single call from an unknown number. With trepidation, she answered. "Hello. Hi, is this Abina?" The voice on the other end was professional, yet kind. "My name is Christine. I'm a journalist with the Morning Ledger. I've been following your story and wanted to see if you'd be open to sharing more about your experience." Abina froze. Her instinct was to decline, to hang up and hide from the world. But something about Christine's tone made her pause. "I'm not sure," she said honestly. "I didn't ask for any of this." Christine chuckled softly. "I understand. But maybe this is an opportunity. Your story is resonating with people, not just because of the note or the tip, but because you represent so many who are working hard, hoping for a break." Abina hesitated. Christine's words struck a chord. The idea of her struggles and her perseverance being a voice for others gave her pause. "Can I think about it?" "Of course," Christine replied. "Take your time. Here's my number if you want to talk." As Abina hung up, she stared at the piece of paper where she'd jotted Christine's number. The journalist had a point. Maybe this wasn't just about her anymore. Later that afternoon, Abina decided to return to the cafe. She needed normalcy, a familiar place to process her thoughts. When she walked through the door, her coworkers greeted her with wide eyes. "You're famous," one of the baristas exclaimed, rushing over. "Everyone's been asking about you. Someone even called asking if you'd do an interview." Abina laughed nervously. "I don't feel famous." "Well, you are," her manager chimed in, walking over with her arms crossed but a soft smile on her face. "And by the way, you've got mail." "Mail?" Abina echoed, confused. Her manager handed her a thick envelope addressed simply to Bina, the waitress. Inside, she found a handwritten letter from a woman in Texas, thanking her for being an inspiration. Attached was a $50 gift card for groceries. There were more letters, too, some from across the country, others from as far away as Europe. "You're touching people's lives," her manager said quietly, patting her shoulder. "Don't let this scare you. Use it." That evening, Abina sat at her small kitchen table, her roommate offering quiet support as she sorted through letters and social media messages. She realized she had a choice. She could let this moment pass, or she could use it to shine a light on people like her, immigrants, students, and workers striving for something better. With a deep breath, she grabbed her phone and called Christine back. The interview with Christine was raw and heartfelt. Abina shared her story, not just of the note, but of her journey. She spoke about her family in Ghana, her struggles balancing work and school, and the kindness of strangers who had made her believe in brighter days. When the article was published, it painted a fuller picture of Abina's life and dreams. It wasn't just about Barron Trump or the viral note. It was about resilience, kindness, and the invisible battles so many face every day. Over the next few weeks, Abina's life shifted. Donations poured in to help with her tuition and bills, but more importantly, her story sparked conversations about empathy and the power of small gestures. Barron Trump, when reached for comment, kept his words brief. "She deserved it," he said simply. "I hope her story inspires others to look for ways to make a difference." And it did. Abina continued her studies, eventually graduating with honors and pursuing a career that combined her love for community and her desire to give back. She started a foundation to support working students like herself, fueled by the belief that even the smallest acts of kindness could change lives. Through it all, she kept the note folded in her wallet, a reminder of the day a stranger's words made her believe in brighter days and inspired her to create them for others.
This is how we should be behaving as Africans. We should be kind to people. You never can tell who you will meet at a particular time. You don't know who might be your helper. This lady never knew that her story would change after serving this young man. Guys, we should learn how to be kind to even people we do not know. We Africans, we are being known with respect and humility. That is how we are being brought up in Africa. Yes, so I love seeing people carrying the culture, not forgetting the teaching they get from their parent back home, especially when they travel abroad. It's beautiful. This lady really proved people wrong. Her coming from Ghana is a big win for Ghana. Of course, guys, keep making us proud Ghanaians. Keep living with a difference outside. Keep making Africa stand. Yeah. This is beautiful. This video deserves to be shared so that the whole world will see for themselves. Yeah. So guys, this brings me to the end of my video. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comment section below. Do well to like, subscribe to the channel, share this video to as many eyes out there. I believe they'll watch and also learn one or two things on this clip. I love you guys always. Bye.